Mastering advice with modal verbs. Hello, English learners. Today, we're diving into the world of modal verbs. Those incredibly useful little words that can change the whole meaning of a sentence. We'll specifically focus on modal verbs for advice. These will help you express suggestions, recommendations, and advice in English. Skills that are invaluable in both casual conversations and professional settings. Modal verbs are a special kind of auxiliary, or helping, verbs. They are used to modify the mood of other verbs, changing the meaning in a subtle or significant way. The most common modal verbs in English include can, could, may, might, must, shall, should, will, would, and ought to. Modal verbs never change their form, regardless of subject or tense, which is a relief when you're learning English. When we use modal verbs for giving advice, we typically use should, ought to, and had better. Let's look at each of these more closely. Should. This is the most common modal verb for advice. When we say, you should do something, it's a suggestion that it is a good idea. For example, you should study before the test. Ought to. This modal verb is similar to should, but it is less frequently used. For example, you ought to apologize for your mistake. Had better. This is a stronger suggestion, often implying a warning or hint of danger if the advice is not followed. For example, you had better lock your doors at night. Remember, these modals are all about giving advice, expressing something that is recommended but not mandatory. Now that you're familiar with modal verbs for advice, let's practice. Try to form sentences using should, ought to, and had better. For example, you should drink plenty of water every day. She ought to call her mother more often. We had better get going, or we'll miss the bus. There you have it, English learners, a crash course in using modal verbs for advice. As with any aspect of language learning, practice is key. So, incorporate these modals into your everyday conversation, and you'll soon be giving advice like a native speaker. Keep practicing, and stay curious. Remember, English is not just a language, it's a means to connect with people and cultures all over the world. See you in the next video.